So I'm Johnny. I'm going to be doing a presentation on physiotherapy, and we also have Liam here who's going to be doing a presentation on nutrition. So he's in-house nutritionist and he's a degree in sports science as well. And then we're lucky enough to have Teresa on. Teresa's going to do a talk for us tonight on coaching, different aspects and how to integrate back into running once you're finished the marathon. Okay. So a couple other people here as well. We have Bren McDade here, who's a member of the committee for the marathon here. So thanks very much for coming as well, Bren. And we have the Runwell athletes here as well. So some of the athletes that are sponsored by the clinic here, we have them along as well. So at the end of the night, you can ask them any questions that you want to about what sort of stuff they're doing. They have all competed internationally, so they've got a lot of experience there. So just a bit about myself to start off. So I did a degree in physio in Georgetown, and I'm currently doing a master's in UCD in sports physio. Director of the clinic here, and then I've worked in the past with Athletics Ireland, Triathlon Ireland and Cycling Ireland. Currently do the work for the paracycling team in Paralympics Ireland. And then just a couple of events that I've worked in, just paracycling, World Track and Road Champs, and just recently there went to the World Uni Games with the Irish team. So just a bit about housekeeping first. So fire exits to the front door that you just came in there, and we also have an exit just to the right hand side here. So this door will be left open just in case we have a bad one. So hopefully not, fingers crossed. Toilets are back out at the reception area, just to the left once you come in the reception. And at the end of the night, we're going to have refreshments just into that room on the left hand side. Once you go out the first door on the left. And the way we've structured tonight is that we're going to have each of us talking for a bit. Physiotherapy to begin with, 30 minutes or so, just on some physio aspects of the marathon. Then we're going to have Liam talking with us on nutrition and hydration. And then we'll have Teresa talking to us at the end then. And we're going to leave 30 minutes or so at the very end. So whenever we get the refreshments, we're all going to be walking around. And anyone that wants to ask any individual questions, if you don't want to speak up during the event, then you can chat away then. Okay? So physiotherapy, we're talking about running injuries in the last month leading up to the event. So a lot of you guys, if you're doing the half or the full, will have kind of probably 1 to 2 long runs left, and then you'll be starting to taper down leading into the event. Teresa's going to chat to you more about that sort of stuff. What I'm talking to you about is in the last 4 weeks we tend to get a lot of runners through the clinic, and they might end up developing a little niggle when they're coming to the end of their long runs, or the end of their program in general. And if you get a niggle, it's important that you address it straight away. Sometimes a niggle can snowball, and then you end up getting to a case where you're 1 or 2 weeks out from the marathon and you're kind of wondering whether you'll be able to continue with it or not. So we're going to be talking about that. Why do the injuries generally occur? Normally it's too much change too soon. That's in general, any injury to the body is a case of us loading it up more than the body has the ability to adapt to that loading. Okay, so your body's a fantastic machine. It has the ability to adapt to whatever stresses you put it under. So if you do weight training, your body will adapt and get stronger. If you do more aerobic work, your aerobic system will adapt and become more efficient. So your body can generally adapt to whatever you ask it to do, but if you ask it to change too quickly, that's when it starts to break down and there's an inflammatory process takes place. Okay. Most often, it's going to be the knee involved. So over 40% of running injuries occur at the knee joint. Okay. Second to that, well, in the knee joint, you've got your IT band, which is a structure down the outside of the knee here. Often that's a problem area, or PFPS stands for patellofemoral pain syndrome, and that's pain in and around the kneecap. Okay, so generally it's one of those two things that we'll see if people come in with from repetitive mileage. Second to that, then you've got injuries in and around the ankle joint, so your Achilles or calf muscle. And then thirdly then, and least common, is kind of hip lower back area. That comes in there. Generally with the hip and lower back, hip it's going to be kind of outside of the hip area. And again, it's a lot to do with stability and strength in around the hip. And lower back again then just due to impact absorption. And we'll talk a bit more about that at the end. So what can you do as a runner? So in terms of the load that we're looking to absorb, because really the majority of the running injuries that we see are due to a couple of things, and one of the primary things is a lack of strength or conditioning to be able to tolerate the load that you're asking your body to do over a certain period of time. But the second thing is how well your body moves, so how efficiently you can absorb impact when you're running. And that impact's absorbed through the ankle joint, knee joint and hip joint primarily when you're running. Okay? So if I weigh 70 kilos and I'm running, generally if I do a single leg squat, there's 1 times my body weight going through the leg, whereas if I jump and land, there's 2.5 to 3 times body weight going through there. Okay? Your stance phase or your foot contact time when you're running is normally about 30 to 40% of the time. Okay? You can only, or your body's only loaded up for the period of time that your foot's actually touching the ground. Okay? So whenever you're running, your body's absorbing the impact. All the structures on that leg that you're standing on are loaded up. And then when your foot leaves the ground, it's free. Okay? So generally injuries only occur in that 30 to 40% of the gait cycle. So that's what we have to think about primarily when we're changing someone's running or looking to get them to be able to tolerate the load that they're using. That load increases significantly downhill. Up to 7 times your body weight needs to be absorbed by the leg when you're running downhill. Okay? And it decreases significantly uphill. Why that's important is that if someone comes into me and they have an injury that's primarily irritated whenever they're landing or trying to absorb impact through a structure, you might be able to get them running pain-free on a slight incline on a treadmill, whereas they might be painful running on the flat. So you can use that to your advantage. And again, you know, in some injuries you'd be telling people that they have to stay completely away from downhill things, and in times that something's a bit irritated. Just to give you an example of how it works, so if I weigh 70 kilos and say I'm aiming for a 4-hour marathon time, 70 kilos, if we multiply that by 3 times my body weight, and then if I take a cadence, the majority of people will have a cadence of between kind of 76 and 84 steps per minute in each leg. So if you multiply that by how many steps you take in that minute, and then how many minutes it takes to do the marathon, you'd be absorbing about 4 million kilos through each leg when you run. Okay, so the way that you do it and how strong the structures in your leg are is really important. Okay. So again, I just said most commonly it's mechanical irritation. So there's a structure in the body that's being annoyed because repetitively it's being asked to do a certain thing that it's not strong enough to tolerate. Okay. And again, body's ability to adapt, but we have to be mindful that we can't do that too quickly. Okay. If we end up getting a niggle somewhere, the most important thing is to find a way to deload the area. Okay, so if we're doing something that keeps annoying a structure, we have to, and the most important thing is to find a way to be able to continue on without annoying it. Okay, and sometimes it involves rest or different things, but we'll talk a bit more about that again down the line. But the most important thing is you need to give it some breathing space for that inflammatory cycle to settle down. Okay, so act quick, but don't panic. So we need to address things quickly before they end up spiraling. So if you have a niggle, you know, when you're a month out from the marathon, the worst thing that you can do is say, oh, I'll just run it off and we'll see what happens. So, you know, at this point, you're kind of 4 weeks out. It's not the end of the world if you have to take 2 or 3 days deloading, because there are other activities that you can do to keep up your fitness. But you definitely need to think of a way to take a little bit of pressure off whatever's annoyed, and it shouldn't really disrupt your plan too much down the line. Okay. In the case of inflammation, again, the most important thing is to rest or deload temporarily. We can do this, and I'll explain it a little bit more after, by manipulating your cadence a bit, so how many steps you take per minute. Other ways are using the bike, where there's no impact and you've less kind of pressure going through the structures in the lower limb. In that way, you're still able to keep up your aerobic fitness and a bit of muscular conditioning in the legs without annoying things too much. Again, kind of using aqua jog in there, so again, low impact, and you're able to use the water to kind of give you a bit of a strength base and keep up your aerobic fitness. Or again, running uphill slightly, which will decrease the impact on the lower limbs. And that depends on the organ. So again, we're talking kind of generally here, but in most cases, that's going to do what we're doing. Compression, so much less important than deloading, but again, sometimes we use that in terms of trying to treat inflammation. Ice, so the kind of jury's still out on whether ice is effective. There's lots of research saying that it is, and lots of research saying that it isn't. It's been used typically in the past a lot, even at elite level, and still is today, but I'm kind of generally would say that people, if they're using, say, cryotherapy, or if they're using ice frequently and they feel that it really works for them, just to keep doing it, but tend not to generally tell people to start doing it if they're not already using it as part of their kind of plan or recovery. With that, you'd be maybe thinking about icing for 2 to 3 days following an injury if you're going to use it, and then ceasing. In terms of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, I would be talking to people, and they tend to take a lot of Nurofen if they feel any niggle coming on, but the important thing to remember is that it can increase the risk of a lower gastrointestinal bleed, so you really need to be careful with that, particularly if you're eating a lot of spicy foods or you're taking a lot of caffeine in your diet. So just again, getting medical advice before you would take anti-inflammatories off your own bat. Okay. Strategies to deload, again, we've got rest here. When I was talking about cadence manipulation, there's a lot of research out at the minute that shows that if we figure out a way, and normally I use a thing called a metronome, but if you've got a niggle, and it's been pretty effective, in the last couple of years I've used this a lot, but if we get you to take 10% more steps each minute, then what happens is your stride length decreases, your foot contact time decreases. Remember, we were talking about 30 to 40% of the time your foot's loaded. Well, when you increase your cadence, that percentage decreases. Okay, so your knee angle improves when your foot hits the ground, and so generally the load is decreased on the knee by 14%. Okay, so if you just have a niggle that's starting off, and we can figure out a way of enabling you to keep running with manipulating your cadence a little bit, then you can keep going without irritating the knee any further. Okay, and the ankle joint, one of the ways that we sometimes use is just a heel raise. Okay, so if we prop up the heel a little bit and use a heel raise in the shoe, generally it offloads the Achilles tendon, and we can sometimes use that to help people get through a run. And this is primarily looking at the road to recovery, but I think it's good for people planning the marathon as well. Please, I'll chat to you as well. But generally, everybody has their program they're starting off with, and it has a certain number of runs on it. And if everything's rosy, it's going to be like that picture on the right-hand side there. But typically, with kind of work commitments and family life and different things, you're going to miss runs here and there. You might get a niggle here and there, so you're always going to have to adapt. And at the end of the day, provided that you're adapting in the right way, you'll be able to get where you want to be. It's just about kind of choosing where we steer you. And as physios, that's probably one of the ways that one of the things we have to look at mostly is figuring out different ways that you can keep getting where you want to be without irritating certain things or modifying things in a way that's going to disrupt your training too much. Recovery strategy. So it's really important everybody has a recovery strategy in place for the day. So that involves rest, and so training. Everyone kind of would think that the marathon training is primarily about running, but unless you're getting the right recovery, it's not going to work. When you're actually running, what you're doing is to a certain extent, you're breaking down fibers in the body. You're getting your cardiovascular system, your cardiac system to work and become more efficient, but that adaptation takes place, and the changes in your body take place when you're resting in between runs. Okay, so it's really, really important. We're going to talk a bit more about sleep in a second. Liam's going to guide you through the nutrition part of it, and I'm going to give you a little bit of advice and info on the compression massage side of things. Again, another recovery strategy is cryotherapy. Like I was saying, there's kind of conflicting research at the minute, but it doesn't mean that you can't use it. So if you're using that at present and you feel it really works for you, then definitely go ahead and keep going with it. In terms of sleep, I've got a graph in a second that'll show you, but we generally recommend about 8.5 hours sleep per night. In that sleep, it's best to try and get 8.5 full hours. So there's rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement types of sleep. And whenever you fall asleep, it takes 60 to 90 minutes for you to fall into a deep enough sleep that you end up releasing growth hormone, and the recovery kind of takes place in the body. So try and get that full 8.5 hours instead of sacrificing and saying that I'll get 6.5 or 7 hours and I'll take a power nap later on. Because with a power nap, although you'll kind of feel more switched on after it and mentally feel a bit better, it doesn't allow you to sleep long enough for your body to get physiological benefits. Okay, so try and get your 8.5 hours per night. And that's, as I say, that's as important as the running as well. So if you're not getting enough sleep and it's very poor sleep, then you really have to think about a sleep strategy as well. And small things are just keeping the room very dark, keep it cool, limit your caffeine and alcohol intake, and even just thinking about increasing your sleep time, or the amount of time you give in your day to sleep, to maybe 9.5 hours in the time leading up to the marathon. And it's important to have a routine, so try and get into the habit of going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time every day, and kind of get into a routine with it. If you're having bother sleeping ever, you can contact the GP, and there's a good thing called melatonin at the minute, so it's naturally released in the body, and generally it's linked to daytime. Okay, so whenever there's daylight, it's linked to your melatonin release in the body. And it's freely available over in the States, but it's under GP referral or GP access here. But if you take melatonin 4 hours before you want to sleep, it tricks your body into feeling tired and generally helps you out. So a lot of people use that when they're traveling to get over jet lag and different things like that. And it's really, really safe. And I'd say before too long over here you'll be able to buy it over the counter as well. And this is just a graph looking at the likelihood of injury based on hours of sleep per night. So we have here, you can see that athletes who sleep on average less than 8 hours per night have 1.7 times greater risk of being injured than those who sleep for more than 8 hours. So there's been a lot of research into this, and they found that there's a link between the amount of rest and recovery that your body gets through sleep and your likelihood of injury. Okay, and you can see there that if you get 9 hours sleep per night, that goes way down again, whereas if you're sitting at 5 hours sleep, or 6 hours sleep, 7 hours sleep, your kind of likelihood of getting injured is higher. Okay, compression, so compression garments, so the likes of your compression socks or your 2XU or compression garments generally give you a pressure of about 37 millimeters of mercury in the body, and there has been links and studies have shown that wearing compression garments post-exercise does improve recovery following running. But a lot of runners tend to wear the compression garments during running, but it's important to remember that no improvements have been shown in performance when people are running with compression gear. So the link is it's a good recovery strategy post-run, and a lot of people feel better when they have the compression on, but it won't kind of improve your performance. But it is a good strategy after you finish the run or the marathon or your long runs leading up to the event to be wearing some compression gear for a couple of hours after you finish your run, just to help things flush through the legs. There's also, we have a thing in the clinic here, a Normatec recovery system. So it works pretty much in the same manner, but compression socks and compression stockings generally give a constant compression, whereas it's intermittent sequential pneumatic compression. So it's basically a medical pump, okay, and we can put up to 100 millimeters of mercury pressure through the legs. And what it does is it starts at the bottom of the boot and will inflate, compress and flush toxins and blood out of that area into the next chamber, into the next chamber, into the next chamber, and the bottom chamber will release. So it's basically giving you like a high pressured flush out, and it works in much the same way. And we would generally recommend 30 to 60 minutes in the Normatec boots, and it's an effective recovery strategy, basically by improving circulation, increasing blood flow. And when you're heating, we've got in here groceries in, garbage out. So when you're exercising, you're producing byproducts in the legs. So you've got your lactic acid and various things that build up when we're exercising. Okay, and part of the recovery strategy is getting those out of the body as quickly as we can. But then for the body to heal and structures in the body to recover efficiently, we also need then blood flow to take all the good nutrients to that tissue that needs to recover. So the boots and massage and the compression here all work in a very similar way, and it's trying to flush things out of the legs and get new blood, new oxygen, new nutrients back to the muscle as quickly as possible. Okay, that's Thomas Barr there. So we won a gold in the World Uni Games there. He's the first Irish athlete since Sonny O'Sullivan to win one in the 400 hurdles. So he did really well there. Massage. So therapeutic effect of massage. So we tend to use it a lot in physio and manual therapy, and loosening up things in the legs and getting things moving a little bit better. But in terms of recovery, several studies have shown that it's improves recovery between sessions. So post-training and between long runs, we tend to give a lot of the athletes deep tissue work and flush the legs out and get things moving in the legs. But it's important to remember, especially coming up to an event, that you don't want to go too deep. So like the last thing that you would want to do is pull up to the race and be feeling sore from a massage that you've had a day or two before. So normally I'd recommend that if people are going to get work done and they feel they need something a little bit deeper or something loosened out, that you kind of get it in good time. So 4 to 5 days before you would compete, and that gives you're probably going to end up doing 1 to 2 light runs in between that and the actual marathon, which lets your legs kind of get used to running again. So I would always advise that someone generally tries a light run in between getting any massage work done and the actual event that they're taking place, because it improves the brain muscle connection as well and gets you used to that feeling, particularly if you've had things loosened up a lot. In terms of footwear, so really for the marathon it's going to be comfort and familiarity, and the other thing that we tend to see a lot through here is in the weeks leading up to the event that someone will have trained for a long time in a particular pair of runners, and then suddenly they'll feel like they want to change something. And if you change, like we talked before about, say in my case, like 4 million kilos needing to be loaded through the lower limb. If you change the base of support for the foot at all, then every structure up the chain has to work in a slightly different way. So what I'd say to people generally is to stay on the safe side. If you've been training in a runner and it's, as long as it's not full of holes and your feet are slipping out, if the runner's half decent and you've been doing all your mileage in it and you've no wrinkles, then it's probably the safest thing to wear on the day of the marathon. So, and it's the same principles along the whole way, is keeping things familiar. So whatever's worked for you in your training leading up to the event is going to work for you in the day. Okay, so the last thing you want to be doing, even in terms of nutrition or footwear or anything, is going to be changing what you're doing too much in the week or two leading up to the event. Okay, so keep it familiar. After you're finished getting a new pair of runners, or if you were thinking about changing like now leading up to the event and you've no niggles, what I'd recommend is getting the exact same pair of runners that you've done your mileage in up to this point. Okay, because runners need a couple of weeks to get broken in as well. It's important to remember that in terms of blisters and things like that. So the other thing is there's no correlation at the minute between the price of a runner and the injury rate. So what I generally say to people is, provided that a runner is giving you enough support, adequate support, and the guys in the shops will be able to steer you in the direction of the right type of runners to be getting, as long as it's really comfortable and you've got plenty of space in the foot box, which allows your toes to spread and absorb the impact in the right way. It's really whatever fits your foot best and works best is going to be the best for you. So the most expensive runner isn't always the best runner for you out there. Okay, whatever fits you is the way to go. And if you want any or need any assessment or to speak about it at all, as I say, we'll be floating about after tonight, or even after the event. We can help you out with that. Okay. We've got a bit now just about the Runwell athletes. So before we finish up, or before I finish up and talk, I'll just introduce them quickly because you guys can speak to them after. But Connor's in here, he's sitting down the back there. But Connor's ran internationally, and you know he's a very experienced runner, and he's actually coached by Teresa here as well. So he'll be here after to answer any questions you guys have. Danny's here. Danny's also represented Ireland, and he's going to be here. And again, Teresa's coaching Danny as well. and Danny's always got something good to say. Anne-Marie and Glenn here as well, so we've got European cross country bronze medalist here. She was the team captain that year, so she'll be here as well to speak to you. And again, Teresa's looking after Anne-Marie as well and helping all the programme and coaching, doing a great job. Teresa McGloin's here as well, so Teresa's a member of Finn Valley over there, and she's ran internationally again as well. And she'll be here. She's coached by Mark Connolly over in Finn Valley, and then Natasha Adams, last but not by no means least. So again, ran internationally and running really quick at the minute. And again, coached by Teresa McDade. So all the guys are really friendly and approachable. So if anyone wants to chat to them or kind of find out any bits and pieces or pick their brains at the end, they'll be there to help you out. One of the things that we haven't really touched on as much tonight, but it's really important in general and kind of across the board in terms of physio, and it's one of the main kind of strategies that we use in the clinic here is strength training. Okay, so appropriate exercise is by far the best medicine for not only kind of every physical ailment, but every condition generally across the board. The important thing is finding appropriate exercise, and the same thing goes for minimising risk of injury. Okay, so all the Runwell athletes will do strength work, and there's loads and loads of good research out there on using strength work to minimise risk of injury. We haven't really gone through it today because if you're not currently doing strength work, I didn't want to be kind of encouraging it too much, because as I say, you're best using the type of strategy in the last couple of weeks that you're familiar with and not introducing anything too new. But down the line, if you were ever thinking about anything, appropriate strength work is the way to go. And it's not all about kind of lifting light weights with high repetition. There's loads of good research now at the minute about lifting heavier weights with fewer repetitions to not only build up strength and improve performance, but also make the structures in the body more durable and able to tolerate more over longer periods of time when you're running.